guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. My name is Maddie Walko, and I'm a college softball player from the great state of Texas. And I'm so excited that you are tuning into the Radiate Your Faith podcast, where I hope you are encouraged to let the light of Christ shine through you in a way that allows people to see God through the way that you walk with Him. My prayer for you is that your faith is deepened, that it is strengthened, and that you are encouraged to radiate your faith. Hey guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. I am so excited that you guys are joining me for this week's episode. Ainsley and I are in the same outfits we wore when we filmed her testimony video, or like the story of how she came to Christ. So just pretend like we're not wearing these. But for many of you, you may not know Ainsley. She was on before, and I'm just going to go ahead and let her introduce herself to you guys.
Hey guys, I'm Ainsley. I was on here before, so some of you guys might already know that Maddie and I met at McLennan. But originally I'm actually from Oregon, so it's been an interesting transition coming to Texas, but it's been the best because I've gotten a chance to meet Maddie, and she's just created this awesome experience for everyone around her and for herself. But yeah, so we went to, unfortunately, we only went to college for 1 year together.
We did, but you know what? The Lord did a lot in 1 year.
Yes.
So it's been super cool. And if you guys haven't checked out our first video together, I would recommend you do that, because a lot of that ties into this episode, just with the whole concept of love, how it's so different from how the world like says it should be. Yeah, like perceives it. So our conversation today is just going to be about modern love versus biblical love, because it is such a big part of Ainsley's testimony, just learning the difference between, okay, this is what culture says love is, but what does God say love is?
Right.
So we're just going to, honestly, this is going to be so chill. Like, we're just going to kind of go and like talk to each other about stuff, because we could talk for hours. But just to get us started, we're going to ask the question of, what does modern dating / love look like?
I think a lot of times, like now, like in this 21st century, in 2023, 2022, like we are so caught up in trying to just like meet someone, and the idea that like anyone could really we can meet anyone on like a dating app, or like, and there's no hate in dating apps, because I use them and they just didn't work for me. And that goes a lot in with my last video. But it just didn't happen to be what works for me. And it works for some people and it doesn't. But I think too, like we get caught up in so much like physicality in those kind of relationships too, is like we're not, it's kind of like you look at like how it was in the old days, is kind of like in a way like biblical love, but like just in terms of like meeting so naturally and not trying to like meet each other online, but like finding each other in like a coffee shop or at school, or you know, someone you've known for a long time. It could be a lot of different things, and trusting that like that's our person potentially. But I feel like biblically, we look a lot about like with God and who He has for us eventually down the line, and like how it should be like very natural, and like we eventually find that person, and God leads us to that person when we're both ready, like when your partner is ready, when God thinks you guys are both ready to find each other.
Yeah, and Ainsley and I have had numerous conversations about dating apps, because both of us have downloaded them before, and for some people it's great, like no hate on dating apps, but for me there was a personal conviction of the reason I used them was because I didn't trust God's timing. I just wanted to date someone so bad that I was like, well, I'm just going to download an app and maybe I'll meet somebody that way. And so for me it was a personal conviction, because it wasn't like, I don't know, it just felt like I was trying to force something. But again, if dating apps are for you, go for it. It's just, for me, there was a personal conviction. I know for Ainsley there was too. And I think when we're talking about modern dating / love, culture has really twisted the way that we see people. And culture also makes it to where a lot of things are so selfish. Like, we care more about like our proposals looking good for our Instagrams, or our pictures together looking perfect with the right captions. Like, we're so focused on the public's perception of a relationship that we don't invest in those people wholeheartedly. Like, we're just so focused on the image that we put out that we're not like loving that person. And
Right.
this is some advice that I had received. This was in high school. So this was before I'd even really like known God or anything. I was talking to one of my dad's work friends and I was like, I want a boyfriend. Like I was just like, I'm so lonely. I want a boyfriend.
You're like, I want a
Give
boyfriend.
me a boyfriend.
Give me someone.
Yeah.
Give me somebody.
Yes. And so he like started laughing at me. And I was like, okay, well, first off, rude. Second off, what's so funny? And he's like, I find it so interesting that you want the idea or concept of somebody and not that person. And I was like, what? He's like, you want the experience of a boyfriend, not, there's not like a person that you know that makes you want to have a boyfriend. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, first
So
off,
real.
I felt a little attacked. But second off, that's good stuff, y'all. And I think that's a really good way of just checking your heart of like, okay, do I want an experience or do I want a person? Like I just recently started dating this guy. And yes, which I in the order of us like how I post this.
Oh yeah,
you might already know.
This could be interesting.
Yes, but I ever since he said that to me, it's changed my perception of like, okay, what am I looking for? And he is one of those people that it's like, because I care about him and I love his heart, like I don't necessarily want a boyfriend. I just want him. And that would just so happen to be a boyfriend, I guess, which I think that piece of advice is great.
Oh, yeah.
So that definitely changed things for me. And I also think too, like modern day love is like, we just picture it because of like what the internet tells us, like movies and stuff. So
yeah, I think too, like another thing is like, and you and I have talked about this a lot, is like we're getting to that age where we're not just dating to date. Like you go through middle school and high school and like you're kind of just dating to kind of get a feel like for what you like, what you don't like how you want to be treated. Like you're finding things that you like about like what other people can do for you and kind of things like that. And then it's like you get to this age where you're in college and you have to start considering marriage.
crazy stuff, y'all.
Yeah. Like
crazy.
What? Marriage?
I know.
But it's like, I think that's one of the really key things that you and I have talked about a lot about, like, are we dating to marry or are we just dating to date? And what is the point of that? Like, what is the point of just dating somebody just to break up?
And dating to date, y'all, is selfish.
Yes.
Because you're just, in a sense, it's harsh to say, but you're using somebody
to
just
fulfill
for temporary happiness, temporary pleasure, like whatever it is. And so there is a very big difference between dating to date and dating to marry.
Yeah.
Which again, it's so weird to think like we're at that age where it's like it could be real. Like that's so crazy. I feel like I'm still in middle school, y'all. So that's kind of crazy. But
I still feel 16.
Yeah. And that's that belief of like I should be dating with intention and to marry is so countercultural nowadays. Because people are like, just wait till you're like 30. And it's like,
why?
Or
even like marrying young.
Yeah.
Like people like there's so much judgment that's laid upon that nowadays. Like people are in their early 20s who are getting married and getting like engaged and people are just like, oh my gosh, like have so much, I feel like.
Yeah. They're like, what are they doing? They're too young.
They're too young.
But this is actually from a book that I read. They were talking about like, so yeah, like it's very countercultural to marry young, but like if you're like getting out of college, you're starting to plan what you want to do with your life. Why wouldn't you want to do it with the person that you love? Like make all those decisions together. That's the best for the both of you. Like, obviously if you're not dating someone, it's different. Like if you're single, make a decision that's best for you and best in line with what God wants for you. But if you are dating someone and you can see marriage as the end goal, you're dating with intent, don't let age freak you out because it's so much better to just walk in what God has for you than to just listen to society tell you you're too young. Just do what God's calling you to.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, like God's timing is so perfect. And I feel like that, you don't look at it from that perspective almost. I'm like, oh, it's too young to marry. But I feel like those two things can like very much tie in together. Like if that's timing for you and your partner that God has for you, then like, regardless of what age, if you're young, you're old, like whatever it is, like that's God and he's going to find that time for you when it's right. And you can't let numbers just kind of get in the way of that. Or let other people's like judgments kind of get you down about that. You have to trust that it's the Lord.
Yeah. And I will tell you, like marrying young, it's not a bad thing as long as the way you go about it is like glorifying to the Lord.
Yes.
Like, if you're dating someone and they make you feel a certain way and you're like, oh, I'm in love with this person because of like that feeling, don't marry that person. Like, just because they make you feel happy or they make you feel a certain way, that doesn't last. And what I would tell you is if you're going to make that decision, you want to get married young, look at who they are, what characteristics they have. Are they pursuing the Lord? Do they care for people? Do they serve? Do they have their priorities in check? Like, don't look at it as, well, this guy's cute and he makes me happy and he takes me on cute dates. Like, who is this person? Does he have characteristics that are going to make him a good husband, that are going to make him a good father, and vice versa for a woman? Is she going to make a good wife? And everyone always jokes about like the Proverbs 31 woman. Like,
oh, don't even get me started.
The Proverbs 31 woman is like the ideal like Christian woman. And for guys, I think it's like in 2 Timothy, like the depiction for them. But
Yes.
I would tell you, like, if you're going to marry young, it has to be a priority that God's number one, and that who they are is good. Like they have good characteristics. They want to glorify the Lord, and they can lead you well. Those are very important things. So that would be my hot take on that. Y'all, this is a little chaotic. We just are like, let's just talk about
this. Was on a whim.
This was on a whim. This is great. What would we say biblical love would look like, and how does it differ from what we've experienced?
I think biblical love is so sacred. Like, I think that's a really good way to like look at it. And it's so like special and like it's so like gentle almost
and unique. Like, it's so different from anything you'd ever experience.
And you wouldn't know it until you like know God's love.
Yes.
And like that's the first thing, is like knowing what God's love is, and then searching for that in a partner, because that is like going to be one of the ways that you find God in somebody else. But also kind of like fulfilling those like that's those characteristics. Like, you want to find someone who's unconditional.
Yeah.
You want to be with somebody who's going to be and that's someone that's not easily angered or is going to judge you for things or hold grudges. That's kind, caring. I mean, you get 1 Corinthians 13 and it lays out this whole like list of like things
what love is.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, especially in dating, and like kind of using that as a checklist of like, does your partner fulfill these things? Do you fulfill these things?
Right.
And until you can find someone and find yourself doing those things, then I think like that's really important, because once you do find that person, you're going to find a lot of fulfillment with the Lord and working alongside your partner with the Lord as well. Yeah. And allowing him to guide that.
Yep. And I would say too, y'all, like, there's so much freedom that comes from being with somebody who knows and loves God and puts him first, because not only are they gonna like treat you well, but like they're gonna know how to love you right because they love God. Like, whenever they're struggling with stuff, they're not gonna turn to other women or to alcohol or whatever. They're gonna turn to God, and that is so important. And also, like, this is a concept me and my best friend Tori have talked about, which I learned through one of my previous relationships, is that if somebody doesn't know God, they're not ever going to be capable of fully knowing you. Which I was like, what? Like, that was a really hard lesson to learn, because no matter how close we were, God wasn't a priority for him. And so I felt like he never really got to know like the depths of who I am or my heart, because he didn't know God. And that is such a big part of who I am. And I was never able to be loved right. Yeah. Just because he didn't know how to love me, because he didn't know what love is, which it all ties together. Yeah. And I also think there's this beautiful part of it too, that's like, if somebody does know God and they find full fulfillment in the Lord, they aren't dating you because they need to date you. They're dating you because they want to date you. Like, how cool is that? I'm not not filling some role for them. Like,
or being put on a pedestal.
Yeah. Like, they're just dating me because they're dating me to love me. They're not dating me to just get something out of it for them. Right. It's so cool.
I think too, like, and a lot of like difference. I mean, you and I both have experienced the difference in, well, sort of experienced.
Oh yeah,
we have. We've both kind of had like worldly relationships,
which we talk about in the the video that she was in
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
And we kind of compare those, like almost like we went through those things because it set us like a list of standards to like kind of like use from now on.
Yeah.
And like with God, like he's given us those experiences to know what's actually love and what is really going to be what we want and what God wants out of a relationship for us,
Mm-hmm.
and not what someone wants because of their worldly and earthly emotions.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you talk about all the fruits of the Lord and all those things that tie into that.
Yeah.
And if it's until you meet that person who's going to fulfill those fruits, you're probably not going to be with a godly man or woman because you want to be with somebody who's going to fulfill those things. I mean, for me, like my last relationship, it was a lot of physical things that I was very lucky to have been rebirthed from. But now it's like that's the one thing I want is just an emotional foundation.
Yeah.
A godly foundation that's going to like be like very like loving and just happy and gentle.
Yeah.
And not having to have that stress of like those like pressurized acts of things that I think our society like really like tries to just glorify in a way.
Yeah.
That in the Bible is not.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big difference that I've experienced for myself, is the difference of what's being glorified in a relationship. And if God is not being glorified and physical elements of a relationship are being glorified, then that is not what God has in store for us, and that's not what he intends.
Yeah. And y'all, if you're glorifying physical acts, you're taking glory away from the Lord.
Yeah.
Which is a really hard truth. But we actually, her and I talked about this last night, is the importance of boundaries,
Yes.
physical and emotional, but like a really good way to, I mean, obviously, like we want to glorify God in everything we do, but a really great way to protect your relationship with somebody is to have those physical and emotional boundaries in place, because then you're ensuring that you're setting your relationship up to be, you guys are after one another's hearts and not after one another's bodies.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah, it's just it sets the foundation in a way that from the start we've chosen to glorify God. Like that starts your relationship. That's going to strengthen it, but also continuing to choose to want to glorify God in your relationship and have those boundaries in place. Then you're also ensuring not only are we choosing to glorify God, but we're also choosing to be selfless and save those things for whoever we're going to end up with in the future. It's a very loving thing, and it protects your relationship from it becoming something that you don't want it to be built on.
Right.
What would you say are qualities of a man/woman who will love you biblically?
Well, obviously, okay, so my first thought goes to Song of Solomon. And throughout the entire just chapter, like he is talking about his beloved and he is just like bragging about her, and in such a like biblically like beautiful way that like is obviously not represented in our modern age anymore. But if any of you guys have not read it, I encourage anyone to just to like get an understanding for like how beautiful love can be and how God can glorify those like the love that we can have, and just like push that and want us to like enjoy it, and just be like confident and just so sure about our partner in that, because that's what Song of Solomon is like so much like confidence and being so proud with who you're with because they are a believer and they glorify the Lord on their own. But it's when they come together that it's like it's this beautiful thing that God's created for us to have when it's set in stone and when everything kind of falls into place. And he just talks about King Solomon just talks about like his beloved so beautifully and so poetically and biblically.
Man's got riz.
He's got riz. He's got Bible riz. Or yeah. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, like reading through Song of Solomon, I actually did that for Valentine's Day this year, which was so lame, whatever. But I read through that, and again, like what you said, the way he talks about his beloved is so beautiful. And like there's certain parts that are like, you're a lily among the thorns. And she says that he's like 1 in 5,000, something like that. Like it's very obvious that the Lord in that relationship that's depicted, like that God made them for one another. And like I think what's been interesting in experiencing worldly love compared to like godly love now is that it's so unlike anything I've ever experienced. Like it sounds bad in a sense, but like guys who are living for the things of the world, it's like they're all the same person. Like there's no
NPCs.
Yeah. They're just not there's not it's like everything else.
Yeah.
But whenever you do meet this person that God has for you, it's like it's so different and it's so unique. And like it says like a lily among the thorns, like they just stand out to you. It's just so different from any relationship. And even like my relationship I'm in now, he's told me, he's like, it's interesting. I go to a Christian school and I'm surrounded by all of these Christian girls, but none of them like stand out to me like you do. Like it's so different. And I think it's so beautiful that God like makes it in a way that it's like that kind of love is so unique and it's such a beautiful representation of God's love for us. Because when you really think about it, like marriage, it's just a symbolic representation of Christ and the church coming together. And if it's that sweet with somebody on earth, like just imagine how sweet it's going to be when we get to be with God. Like it's so beautiful. And y'all, it's worth the wait, like waiting for somebody who is after the Lord, who wants to know your heart. It's such a beautiful thing. And do not settle. Like don't settle. That is my biggest piece of advice, is even though it's hard to wait, like y'all, it's so worth it, because getting to experience love like that is unlike anything. Like it's so worth it. So any final thoughts before we end the video?
I think like watching you like kind of experience like your last relationship and versus where you are now, she's an entirely different person. Like just because of the way that she is being, like knowing how God loves her and watching her be loved by the Lord, and then seeing this relationship come out of this, she's the same way, with that kind of like light and that like joy and that like love to you. But like it's like magnified because you have someone who's also doing the same thing, that or kind of like guiding you. He's walking with you through him. And it's really cool to see that, because you're like, you got this like really cool glow to you that's like you have more of God's love that like I could ever see in anyone else. And I think that's like such a good symbol for showing that like it is worth the wait, and trying to wait and find that person, pray about it, and just do your readings about it, and just wait and wait until you like, and like at the end of the day, like there will be no barriers, there will be nothing that gets in your way. And just hearing you guys talk about it is just one of those beautiful things I've ever seen. And I think it's an inspiration for like everyone. And it's an example, because I know that like you were stressed about not finding that person.
Yeah, like if y'all know me, like the biggest desire in my heart has always been like marriage, which obviously I'm not married. I'm just dating. Obviously, we're dating, like we've chosen to date in a way that's going to be glorifying to the Lord, and like that's geared towards marriage, being with somebody who knows the Lord and loves the Lord, and that it's just like being with him is like a beautiful reflection of like God's love.
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely
really cool.
I would agree with that. And I think too, like equality is like fulfilling 1 Corinthians. Like for me, like I mean, her and I talked about this the last time we were together, but it is such a crucial thing. Like 1 Corinthians is gonna like, that's gonna be like the weight of the relationships that I pursue, because of the Lord, because it is love. Like that is the truth, that is the love that you can receive, that you can give. And if like that is like just down to the nitty gritty of it, like that is it. And if you're receiving that, if you are giving that, that is love, and that is God's love. And that is like the purest form of love that you can possibly receive and give. And that's where I like try to base a lot of like friendships, relationships, anything, is like I want to be giving people that love. I want to love people like God loves people. And in return, I hope that whoever I'm with, all my friends, are loving me the same way, because I think it's just a beautiful thing. And I think it's one of the like coolest things is just knowing what God's love is like, and then knowing what it's like through God's love through someone that we deeply care for.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be romantic.
No.
Like even just friendship.
Yeah.
Like me and Ainsley's friendship is so cool. And I think we can both agree we see the Lord in each other.
Absolutely.
Like just the way we're able to love one another. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And for those of you too, like who are still waiting to meet a person, y'all, that singleness time, I'm telling you, as much as it sucks, like coming from somebody who hated being single,
Yeah,
like
she hated it.
I would like get bullied by waiters. Like we don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
That's horrible. They're like, you're by yourself. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Anyways, that's a whole nother story. But being single's tough. Like I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard. But y'all, that time is so important. And when we talked about like having to experience a worldly relationship to see God's love, like that time after experiencing a worldly relationship where it was everything I thought I wanted, like that whole year after I committed my love story to the Lord, which was a really big deal because I like did not want to let go of the pen, but also like I chose to invest in my relationship with God and become the person that I wanted to be for my future spouse. And man, like it's been so good. It was such a sweet time, and I'm so glad I didn't waste that time. And I would tell you, like, don't waste it. It's a hard season, I know, just waiting, wondering, but y'all, like, take that time to really understand what God's design for love is, and
how he's preparing you
to
find like for your future partner. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
No, that's good. Good. So that'd be my encouragement to you guys, is to do that, because get to start this relationship with this guy now. It's like I'm so glad that I always reference this verse, but I prepared the fields before I built the house, because now both of us are able to have like a foundation that is built on God and not needing something. Like it's just out of pure love for each other. So okay, y'all, so that is the end of this episode. This was really fun. It was like a little girl talk. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know a lot of you guys have told me previously that relationship videos are your favorite to watch, so this is always so fun to talk about, and I have such a heart for this. So I'm so glad you guys were tuning in for the podcast. Also, y'all, Ainsley's got on some merch. If you guys haven't gotten yourself some merch, we do have the store open. But Ainsley, this was so fun, and
thank you so much, Maddie.
This has been so great. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and that you were encouraged to radiate your faith.